Inverse function. Given the function f of x equals 2x plus 3, we are going to find the inverse. Which looks like this. F to the negative 1 power, that's f inverse of x. So to do that, f of x, we let that be y. We have 2x plus 3. Then we're just going to switch the x and the y. X equals 2y plus 3. Then we solve for y. Solve for y. So subtract the 3. So x minus 3 equals 2y. Multiply both sides by 1/2. So the inverse of f is equal to 1/2 x minus 3. Another example. We have k of x equals negative 2x plus 1. K of x is y minus 2x plus 1. Switch the x and the y. All you're doing is just changing places. Switch the x and y. Then solve. Subtract the 1. So you get x minus 1 equals negative 2y. Either multiply both sides by 1/2, which is the same thing as dividing both sides by negative 2. So we get x minus 1 is equal to y. And they will write this as f, oops, not f, this is k inverse of x is x minus 1 over negative 2. We can't have a negative in the denominator, so that cleans up to negative x plus 1 over 2. And that there's kind of a technicality where you can't have a negative 2 in the denominator, but the denominator of a fraction has to always be a positive whole number. Let's do another example. We have f of x equals x over 4 plus 3. So x equals y over 4 plus 3. I let f of x be y, and then I switch the x and the y. Then I solve. Subtract 3. So I get x minus 3 equals y over 4. Multiply both numerators by 4. So 4 times the quantity x minus 3 is equal to the f inverse of x. I just changed the y to the f inverse. Now, here are some practice problems. We'll call these check your understanding. We're going to find the inverse. So given f of x equals negative 2x plus 1, f inverse is going to equal what? B of x is equal to x minus 4. So the inverse of b is equal to what? k of x is equal to 2x plus 3 over 4. So find the inverse. M of x is equal to 2/3 x plus 5. So find the inverse of x. Q of x is equal to negative 2 plus 7x. So find the inverse. V of x is equal to x over 5 minus 4. So find the inverse. Shut the recording down, work through these 6 problems, then turn the recording back on and check the answers. Okay, so the answers. F inverse of x is equal to negative 1/2 times the quantity x minus 1. B inverse of x is equal to x plus 4. The inverse of k is equal to 1/2 times the quantity 4x minus 3. The inverse of m is 3/2 times the quantity x minus 5. The inverse of q is 1/7 times the quantity x plus 2. The inverse of v is 5 times the quantity x plus 5. Now, the next step that we're going to look at is we're going to evaluate the inverse. So we're going to evaluate the inverse. So if we take the inverse of the f of x that we started with, so if we have f of x is equal to 2x plus 3, and we're going to evaluate the inverse at 2. So we're given our f of x, we found the inverse, and we've already solved this. We found that the inverse of 2x plus 3 is 1/2 x minus 3. So we have 1/2, substitute the 2 in for the x, so you have 1/2 times negative 1, so the inverse is negative 1/2. Okay, so now let's look at k of x. And k of x equals negative 2x plus 1, and the inverse is negative 1/2 times the quantity x minus 1. So we're going to find we're going to evaluate this k inverse at negative 5. So that's negative 1/2. Substitute the negative 5 in for the x. So that's negative 1/2 times negative 6. And notice that negative 6 is actually a numerator. So the inverse of k, evaluated at negative 5, is 3. Negative times a negative is a positive. 1/2 of 6 is 3. We'll do one more. F of x over 4 plus 3. F inverse, and we've solved this. So that's 4 times the quantity x minus 3. So we're going to evaluate f negative 1, the inverse of f, at negative 3. So I substitute negative 3 in for the x. So I have 4 times negative 3 subtract 3 is negative 6. So f inverse evaluated at negative 3 is negative 24. So let's take this f of x, and we're going to evaluate that, the inverse. So we're going to evaluate the inverse, f inverse at 4. And the k of x that we've just worked with, we're going to evaluate its inverse at positive 6. And the f inverse, the third one that we have over here, we're going to evaluate that at negative 8. So shut the recording down, take a few minutes and evaluate these, and then come back and check your answers. Okay, so the answer. F inverse at 4, so it's going to be 1/2 4 minus 3 1/2 of 1, which is going to equal 1/2. The inverse of k evaluated at 6. So that's negative 1/2, 6 minus 1. So that's negative 1/2, 6 minus 1 is 5. So that's negative 5 over 2. And the last one, f inverse, 4, negative 8, subtract 3. Negative 8 minus 3 is negative 11. 4 times negative 11 is negative 44. So there's your inverse function, how to find an inverse function, and how to evaluate the inverse function at a given value.